Okay, we can get started. So yesterday we were just getting started on the sugya between there's a machlokes between Yosy and the Tanakama. The Tanakama holds that in the winter, where shade is detrimental to vegetables growing, you'd allowed to plant vegetables under an Asheira tree because they're not benefiting from the shade. Yosy holds they're still benefiting, although not from the shade. They're benefiting from the fact that leaves fall off and they deteriorate and they become fertilizer. So since the vegetables, even in the Emois HaGeshomim, benefit from the fertilizer, it would be awesome. Which seems to indicate that the Yosy Zev is Goyim is awesome. Because yes, when the leaves deteriorate, they do provide some nourishment to the soil. But the soil has its own nourishment in it as well. So it's Zevis Goyim. Yes, the leaves of Avoda Zara, of the Asheira, are impacting the growth of the vegetables, but so are the nutrients in the earth. Yet, Rabbi Yossi still holds its Aser, which would indicate that he must hold that Zev is Goyim. Whenever there's two things involved in nourishing something, we we look at it like it's going to be Aser. So Zev is Goyim, Rabbi Yossi holds it's Aser. The Tanakama, who's not worried about the leaves, must hold that Zev is Goyim is mutter. The Gemara asked a stira because we have a brisa that clearly indicates that the Rabbanan hold Zev is Goyim is Aser, and we have a earlier Mishnah where Rabbi Yossi holds Zev is Goyim is mutter because he allows you to grind up an avodah zarah and throw the dust into the air, even though it might land in somebody's field and cause nourishment to the field. So the Gemara diffused the situation by saying, Rabbi Yossi had Rabbi Yossi like kasha, because that you could be zoyer l'ruach, that according to Rashi, it's because when you're grinding it, you're being mavatal, which is how Rashi learns. Tosfos didn't like that shot because a yid can't be mavatal avodah zarah. So Tosfos learns that it's such fine dust, the likelihood of it having any impact on any field is so low that it's not even zev goyim. But in a case like our Mishnah, we have the leaves falling and nourishing the soil. That's zev goyim. That would be a problem. To favor the steer in the Rabbanon, the Gemara says really the Rabbanon hold that zev goyim is aser. Why in our case do we say it's not a problem? Because although the leaves are benefiting the vegetables growing beneath the tree, the shade of the tree is to the detriment of the vegetables. So if you look at the net effect, there's no positive impact on those vegetables. Yes, if you look at just the fertilizer, there's a benefit, but it's neutralized by the detrimental effect that the shade has on them. And therefore, we don't consider this Zev is Goyim because we don't consider this having any ano at all from the avodah. So we are up to 4 lines from the bottom on Memches Amud Beis. The Sover Rabbi Yossi Zev is Goyim Aser. So you're still maintaining that Rabbi Yossi holds Zev is Goyim is Aser, and that's why we have a concern with those leaves of the Asheira falling onto the vegetables. But we learned, Vatanya, Rabbi Yossi Eimer, Noitin Yicher Shal Orla. You're allowed to take a branch of an Orla tree and plant it because that's not a peri. And only the peri is also by Orla. But the Ein Noitin Ego Shal Orla. You're not allowed to plant the nut of Orla because that's having enough of the peri. You're planting the nut. Mipnei Shu Peri. The Omer of Yudom Rav, Moed Rabbi Yossi B'Devet, Shimnota, or the Hivrich Vaherkiv Mutter. So if you planted a nut, which was an orla, which is osir bano, and it grew into a new tree, that tree is not osir. Why? Because it's zev is goyim. The nut is one of the goyromis of this new plant, but the nutrients of the earth are also a goyim. And you see here clearly that the Yossi holds zev is goyim is mutter. So our kasha is our Mishnah seems to indicate that Rabbi Yossi holds also that you could plant if you planted a nut of orla, the tree will be mutter indicate that we also have a brisa that supports what Rabbi Yudah Marav is saying. That says Moida Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is Moida. Now let's turn on to today's daf Mem Testament Aleph. Rabbi Yossi is Moida. Shimnota vehivrik mutter. So you clearly see that by Orla, Rabbi Yossi on Zev is a garm is mutter. Zogt Gemor b'chitema shani lo Rabbi Yossi bein shari yisur and lavoidis kechavim. Maybe by Avoda Zara, there's a special chumrah of Avoda Zara. There, Rabbi Yossi holds Zev is a garm is also. But by other yisurim, such as Orla, maybe he holds Zev is a garm is mutter. Zogt Gemor Rabbi shani lo. Does he really make that distinction? I'm going to prove to you that even when it comes to Avoda Zara, Rabbi Yossi holds that Zev is a garm is mutter. Because Vatani we learned, Soda shenizdavla bezevel avoidis kachav. A field that you fertilized with zevel of avodah zarah. So you fertilized with isra no. V'chein parish shenispatma b'karshina avoidis kachav. Or a part that you fattened up with oats that were from avodah zarah. The halacha is Tani Chada. One brisa paskins in that case. Sada Tizra Paratishachet. There's no problem over here. You can plant that field. Why? Because it would be Zev. Yes, the Zevel impacts the field, but there's other nutrients there as well. Or Parashin Spatma Kashini of I'm sure it ate Isra Noah, it ate Avodah Zarah, but it also ate regular food. And yet one brisa says there's no concern. Soda Tizara, Parati Shafet. But the Tanya Yidich, there's another brisa that seems to say we have a problem because of Zev Zegar is also. As the other brisa says, Soda Tover, that field you're not allowed to plant it until until the effect and the benefit of the Zevel of the Avodah Zarah dissipates. And Upara Terza, and the Para you should wait until it gets thin and it loses any of the weight that it gained from the oats that it ate that were from Avodah Zarah. So my love, it would make sense to say that this machloikis is machloikis between Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbanon, where Rabbi Yossi would hold parati shachet, and the Rabbanon would hold that you have to let the par get thin, and you have to leave the field fallow. So you seem to have a raya that and Rashi says we already know Rabbi Yossi said in the Mishnah by Arla Zev Zagarim is mutter, so it's logical to say that that's his same position. Rabbi Azar. So that's going to be a shverkeit because here we're trying to say that Rabbi Yossi holds Zev Zagarim is osir. Yet from this brisa of Avodah Zarah, it seems that Rabbi Yossi holds Zev Zagarim even by Avodah Zarah is mutter. Zok Gemara Loi. That's not what the is about. Rather, it's Harab. This would be also. But this is a machlokes between Rabbi Lezer and the Rabbanon. Correct Gemara, you can't just throw names at a machlokes and decide that maybe it's Rabbi Lezer and the Rabbanon. You have to show us elsewhere where Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon have an argument that would also explain this case over here of Avodah Zarah. Zok to Gemara, hi Rabbi Lezer Rabbanon. Which Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon are you referring to? Ilema Rabbi Lezer Rabbanon de Sa'ar. If you mean to refer to Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon of Sa'ar, who have a machloikis by Sa'ar of Truma that fell into Chulin, will it make the whole dough usher or have the kedusha of Truma? It's not be learned. Sa'ar shel Chulin, this shel Truma. There was a little bit of yeast of Chulin and yeast of truma should naflu l'toicha isa, that fell into an isa of chulin. Now the question is, loy bozakidei lechametz, the sa'or of chulin on its own would not have been enough to cause the dough to rise and become chametz. And the truma sa'or wasn't either enough. But v'nitztarfu, if you have a combined effect of the sa'or from the truma and the sa'or from the chulin, that will be able. V'nitztarfu v'chimtzu. What would be the halacha? Zok the Gemara or Belezer Achrein Aniba. You follow the last one.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm about to go through the border, so I'm going to stop speaking now. And I'll continue after we clear customs.
Morning. New Jersey. Okay, yeah.
Were you splits in the vehicle?
Nope. Too busy taking care of the grandkids.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, cleared customs.
Okay, so where do I go now?
Straight. Let's go straight. Okay, so Zok the Gemara weiter. Higher bloods of higher bond. Elimer bloods of bond at Zara. The Tan. Starshal Chulum v'shal Truma shenaflu soicha yisa. Loi bezekadei lechamet v'loi bezekadei lechamet. But it's starfu v'chimtu. The combined effect of the Sa'or of Chulun and the Sa'or of Truma, that was enough already to be mechamet the entire dough. So, what does Rebbe Eliezer say? The last achrein aniba. You look at the last one. Why? Because ultimately the last one is what pushed it over the edge. So if the last one, so you put one bit of sour in and the other bit of sour. If the last bit of sour that you put in was chulin, then the dough will remain as chulin. But if the last piece of sour that you put in, which ultimately pushed it over the edge to become chametz, if that was truma, then we treat the whole dough like truma. The chachamim hold. The chachamim bein shenafal isur lechatchila, bein shenafal isur lebesoif. It doesn't make a difference what came first or last. It will not make the dough into truma at yeheboi kidei lechametz. There would have had to have been enough truma on its own to make it chametz. Therefore, if there's not enough truma on its own to make it chametz, even if it was put in last, it wouldn't make the dough into a status of truma. So you clearly see, Rebbe Eliezer holds zev is a garim is aser. That's why whichever one was last, even though it's not doing the whole job by itself, it's relying on the earlier insertion of sa'ar, it's still going to make the whole thing into truma. That's zev is a garim aser. The Rabbanan holds no. The chametz alone the truma alone had to be enough to be machmetz. So you see, zev is a garim is mutter. So here you have an illustration of Rebbe Eliezer and the Rabbanan arguing about zev is a garim. So let's say that the earlier two brises legabe avodah zara, the brise that it says soda tizra part ishchait, you can ignore the fact that there's an input of avodah zara here. That will go according to the Rabbanan who holds zev is a garim is mutter, and the brise that it says that Sarah Tovar, part to Rosa, you have to leave this field fallow and let the cow get skinny again. That would go according to Rebbe Eliezer, who holds zev is a garim is aser. So that was the Gemara suggestion. Zok the Gemara, that might not work. Now I stopped too early to explain how you see from this machlokes the machlokes of zev is a garim, but I did jump too early because the Gemara continues to bring an explanation of this brisa, this machlokes, Rebbe Eliezer and the Chachamim by Abaye. But Amar Abaye, Loy Shonu El Shekadam Vesilik Esa Iser. The only time we say that you go bus or the last one, according to Eliezer, is only if he took out the Isser before putting the first put in the Sa'ar of Truma, and then he Chulin. Now, Isser, that's when it matters which one was there last. If you left the Sa'ar Sayef that I must have got cut off because of the roaming. I just came off of roaming. Okay, so let me share again the daf. So Abaye explained that if everything is still and the Truma are still there, then everybody, the Rebbe Lezer would agree that it would be also. So let's look at Abaye again. If the Truma is still there when the Chulam was last, but Al Kalponim, you do see this Indian of Zev Zegorim, where in this bride, Rebbe Lezer Zev Zegorim is Osir and the Rabban Old is Mutter. Zokamimai. Maybe you have wrong shot in this brisa. When we made the time of Rabbi Lazar with Abaye, who said it's because of Abaye's svara? Who says we hold like Abaye? And if they're both still there, it will be usher. And if one came out, you look at the last one. Who said that shot? The Ilma time of Rabbi Lazar. Maybe the reason why Rabbi Lazar says you go back to the last one that was added. Mishum da'achar Igomer b'Yisura. Asura, Vigomer b'Yatera, Mutar. Maybe it has nothing to do with Zev Zegoyer. Maybe it's you look at ultimately what pushed it over the finish line. If the Truma pushed it over the finish line, then we look at it like the Truma did all of the work. And if the Hulin pushed it over the finish line to make the Dochamitz, then we look at it like the Hulin did all the work. But maybe it has nothing to do with Zev Zegoyer. So Viter, you don't see any machloikis that muchach that the Rebbe Lezer and the Chachamim are arguing by Zev Zegoyer. So therefore, we have to look to another source. El Rebbe Lezer v'Rabbanan de'etzim. Maybe it's referring to the machloikis Rebbe Lezer and the Rabbanan in the question of using the etzim of an Asheira, which we're going to learn shortly, the Mishnah on Amud Beis. But we're quoting it here. It's non we learned. Not alimena etzim. What if you took wood from an Asheira tree, Asura bano? Of course, the wood is also bano. Hizik ba is a tanner. If you heated up a tanner, if it was a new tanner, and the way they used to forge and seal and complete the new tanner was by heating it up, and that's what's the final malacha, that's the makah b'patish of making an oven to an oven. If you did that with Yisura Yana, then this oven is la'oil mayad osir al Yisura Yana. So therefore, chadash yutatz. If you forge the oven with the fuel, with the wood from an Asheira, you have to destroy the oven. Yoshan, what if it's an old oven that was already forged? You just heated it up with this wood of a Zara. Yutan, you're not allowed to use that heat to bake. You have to allow it to cool off. What if afaboy is a pas? What if you bake bread in it? For instance, you bake bread in an oven that was forged through Yisra. So you forge it through Yisra. Now you have a good oven, it's cooled off. But it has Yisra in it. And then you heat up the oven again with kosher wood and you bake in it, it's Asura. You know why? Asura bano. Why is it Asura bano? Because it's Zev Zegoyer. you have the koyach of the oven itself, which is forged with Isra, but you also have the heat from the new wood that's regular kosher wood. Yet, what does the price say? If this pasta mixed in with other breads, they're all bano. That's the Tanakama. Rabbi Eliezer said, we have a way for you to still be able to use the bread. You know you do, or even if you baked it in a forged by Zara, otherwise you destroy that Shabbos, and then you could still maintain the use of whatever Israel was there. So Oibazo, you see clearly that Rebbe Lezer holds Zev is a Garim is Aser. Amaloi, the Chachamim told him, Ein poidim lavoidis Chacham. The Rabbanan say that you can't be poidim, you can't just be Moilech Hanol Yam Melach and then use the Isur Hano. That doesn't work. So it seems that everybody here learns that Zev is a Garim is Aser. The whole machlokes between Rebbe Lezer and the Chachamim here are whether or not you can be poidim. So you have a good Bekar for Rabbi Eliezer, who holds Yoilech Hano Yam Melech, you have a right that Zev is a Garim is Aser. So Frank the Gemara, that's very good. But we have two brises that we have to solve by the case of Avodah Zara. We have the brisa that says, even though the parah ate karshina Avodah Zara, even though the field was nourished with several of Avodah Zara, you could still plant the field, you could still use the parah, you could still shech the parah. And then we have the other sheet that holds that you cannot. So we want to say the sheet that you could not is Zev is Garim, that's going to go according to Rabbi Eliezer. But the brisa that says you could use it, who's it going to go like? It can't go like the Rabbanon of Eitzim of Avodah Zara, because El Rabbanon, the Pligul of Rabbi Eliezer Maninu, Ilam Rabbanon Machmuri. The Rabbanon also hold that Zev is a Garim is Aser. They hold not only is it Aser, you can't even be pointed. So we need to find a Tana who's going to agree with the first brisa that holds Zev is a Garim is Mutter. So Zok Gemar Elo, you have to go back to Rabbanon de Sar. You have to go back to the Rabbanon of Sar, which we said would have to learn like Abaye. Zok Gemar Emer de Shamus to the Rabbanon the Mekili Besar. You only see by Sa'ar, which is non-Avodah Zara. There you might learn that the Rabbanon holds Zev is a Garim is Mutter. Who said even in the case of Avodah Zara, they would be Mekel. So we're stuck. Elo, you know what we have to do? We have to go back to the drawing. We're going to be forced to say that the two brises are arguing in Rabbi Yosy and Rabbanan. The brise that says it's Aser, Zev is a Garim is Aser, is going. I'm sorry. Really, Rabbi Yosy holds that Zev is a Garim is Mutter. Well, Zev is a Garim is Mutter, and the other brisa is going according to the Rabbanan who holds Zev is a Garim is Aser. So Zok Gemara Olam HaRabbi Yosy v'Rabbanan, and Rabbi Yosy holds Zev is a Garim is Mutter. So if Zev is a Garim is Mutter, why does he prohibit planting vegetables under an Asheira tree? Because of the leaves that will fall, the leaves that would fall on the vegetables shouldn't be a problem, shouldn't be a concern, because at worst it's Zev is a Garim, and Rabbi Yosy holds it's Mutter. Zok Gemara, Rabbi Yosy l'devrei d'Rabbanan Amalu. He Taka holds that you could plant vegetables under an Asheira tree, and there's no concern at all about being fertilized by the leaves. The Zev is a Garim is Mutter. But what he was saying is, Lididi Zev is a Garim is Mutter. But Liditzu, you according to the Chacham who holds Zev is a Garim is Aser, the Mishnah Zev is a Garim is Aser, then you would have to agree that B'Yimoitek Shamim, the Yerakas are also Aser. Not only are there Aser B'Yimoitek where they benefit from the shade, but they also are Aser in the winter, where they benefit from the fertilizer. Which means, what did he say? He said that the reason why the Rabbanan aren't worried about the fertilizing of the leaves is because there's no net benefit from the Avodah Zara. Because yes, the plant benefits from the fertilizer, but it also suffers from the shade. So since there's no net benefit from the avodas kachavim, even if the old zev is a goyer is also this, we don't look at any benefit because whatever benefit you had from the fertilizer is neutralized by the loss due to the shade. Amr Rabbi Yehuda, Amr Shmuel, halacha Rabbi Yosy. Halacha lemaisa, we paskin zev is a goyim is mutter. We paskin that halacha lemaisa that zev is a goyim is mutter. Zok the Gemara, hahu ginta is double bezavla da avodas kachavim. Someone had a garden and it was fertilized with Isurei Hana, with Zevel of Avodah Zara. So Shalach Rav Amram Kamed Rabbi Yosef. Rav Amram sent a message to Rabbi Yosef to find out what should he do with this Gina. Amalei Hachiyam Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Allah Rabbi Yossi Zev is mutter, no problem. You could plant in that Gina, you could use the fruit of that Gina, and there's no issue at all. Now we're going to be on the last Amud. Okay, here we go. Zok Tanaya Mishnah. Not tell me the Mishnah we just learned about on Amud Aleph. Not tell me you took wood from an Asheira tree. Asurin Bano. The wood is also Bano. Hisik boyas a tanner. If you heat it up in the oven with it. If it's a new oven where you're actually forging the oven with this heat, this oven has to be destroyed. The imyoshin, if it's an old oven, then you just can't benefit from the heat. Yutan, before you bake anything, wait till it cools off and bring in new wood that is kosher wood. What if you baked a bread in this oven? Asur ba'ano, the bread will be asur ba'ano. This avra ba'acheres to become mixed in with other breads. Kulon asuras ba'ano. All the breads that they got mixed into would be asur ba'ano. Rabbi Lezer Omer, all you do is, whatever the value of the breads that are asur ba'ano, you destroy that money. And then what do? You can't eat those breads. So Rashi says, even after your halach hana, the yamamelech, what you do is you could sell it to a goy, or you could use it not to eat from. You could use it to wash with. That would be allowed. Now, Amr Loi, the Chachamim told him, "Ain't pidyon avodas kachavim. You can't be poida avodas kachavim. You can't just send a and then you could benefit from this avodah. That will not be allowed. What you would have to do is you'd have to sell this whole batch to goyim and deduct from the price whatever amount of breads that were also you would have to deduct it from the price. Okay. Well, so another duplicate case, except instead of speaking about eights in an oven, we're speaking about something else. Not al himenu karg. What if you pulled a stick, you pulled a peg of wood off of the tree. The halacha is it's also bano. Again, it's from the Asheira tree, it's also bano. But what if arg boy sabeged? You use this twig as a knitting it also it was this is that seven is also bano. Argboy sabeged also bano. The sar if they got mixed in. Kulo nasur bano, they will all be also bano. And so we have literally a duplicate machlokes, and it's going to be difficult to understand why the Tana had to repeat the same machlokes twice, just using a different example. With Shrichazok Gemara, we need both. The Ashminin Kamaisa, if we only knew by the case of the bread that was baked in an oven that was forged by the Avoda Zara, or that was heated by the Avoda Zara. Maybe only there Rabbi Eliezer holds you could be pointed, so to speak, to Avodah Zara. You could be moilach anol yamamelech. You know why? The kagamra pass, when the pass gets completed and its baking is complete, kalil azura. There is no isra anymore because the wood is already burnt. It's burnt into nothing. So the isra no is not in existence anymore. There, Rabbi Yosy is makel and says yoilach anol yamamelech. Avokakar, but a crocheting needle that even after you make the beggar, the needle is still there intact. Avokakar, the isay yisur beine, the isur is still there ben. Aiming modular rabban, and maybe Rabbi Yosy would all there. Yoilech hanol yama melech will not work. V'yashmin kakar, and if we only had a second case in the Mishnah, then I would have said, "Well, kami rabbanon." That's where the rabbanon say you can't be pointed. Avol pass, but in the case of pass, where when the pass is ready, there's no zeicher left of the Isra no, it's already burnt and consumed. You could be Yolech Hanol Yamamelech. That's why the Tana decided to tell us the machlokes between Rabbi Yosy and the Chachamim in both cases. Amar Abchiva read the Rabbi Bar Nachmani, Amar Pchista, Amar Zeiri. Halacha, Rabbi Eliezer, that you could be Mekel, you could be Moilech Hanol Yamamelech. Ikadami, Amar Pchista, Amar Li Abba Bar Pchista. Hachi Amar Ziri, Halacha Rabbi Eliezer, that you could be moilech. We all, and it wasn't the Zebezekler. The Shanu Alapas. This halacha that you can be moilech is only by pas. Avol chavis loy. But if you have a barrel of wine that got mixed in with other barrels of wine, so each barrel is distinct, and we don't know which barrel is the barrel of Isurei Hano, then that would not be mutter. For a Pchista Amar, Filu Chavis Muteris, even a Chavis would be mutter to be Malach Hanoi Lambel. Who gavrid is Arab Lechavisa the Yain Nesach Bechamrei. There was a person who had just this case. A barrel of Yain Nesach got mixed into his barrels. Also coming to Pchista, Amar, he said, Shkoil Arba Zuzeh, take 4 zuz, which is the value of the barrel of Isser, Vishadi V'nahara, throw it in the river, and then I'll be mat you to sell the whole batch of barrels to a guy. So you see, even by Chavos, Allah Lamaisa, we're paskening that this Yodach Hana L'Yama Melech will be effective. Now we're talking about you have a Asheira. Goy could be mevatel on the Asheira. What does a Goy have to do to be mevatel the Asheira? So what you could do is kirsem bizirid. Either what you could do is you could being mevatel it, as Rashi says, kirsem kismin yaveshim shabila not latzar chalishim. You pull twigs off of it for your own use to burn them. So that clearly shows I don't treat this like an avodah zarah. I'm using it as a matchbox. I'm using it. Or notal mimena makala sharvet. Or he took a whole log or a whole branch as a stick. That would clearly show that he no longer is serving this as an avodah zarah. He's literally breaking pieces off of it to use. Afilu. So Ketu Vatla Kirsim Vizirid, not Lamimena, Makal or Sharvit, Afilu Allah Hareza Betela. It's the whole of Avodah Osir, even the part that he didn't break off. But Shifa L'Tzarcha, what if he trimmed some wood off of this Avodah Zarah, but he did it to benefit the Avodah Zarah? Then Asura, then the Avodah Zarah will still be Osir because he's not doing it to benefit himself. He's doing it to benefit the Avodah Zarah. So it's not a bittul. But Shalayla Tzarcha Muteris. But if he shaved the wood off of it because he needed the wood, not to benefit the Avodah Zarah, that's also an expression of bittul, and in fact, it will be wood. those pieces that he broke off, when he broke them off, litzarcha. So he's not being mevatel avodah zarah because he cut pieces of wood off to enhance the avodah zarah. But there's still pieces of avodah zarah that you have here. Would they be mutter bana or also bana? Matay alei. Zokma pligi ba Rav Huna barav Rav Huna b'chiyah barav. Chadam are asur. One of them said those pieces would be asur. They're still avodah zarah. The chadam are mutarin. No, now that they're broken off, that's a bittul on those pieces and they're mutter. Tanya, we learned the brayso command of mutar. We have a brayso that says it's mutar. Tanya, oivet kachavim, a goy, sheshifa avodas kachavim that trimmed off some wood of a getchke. He did it for himself, meaning he's clearly being mevatel the avodah zarah. He ushva'eh mutar. Everything's mutar because he was mevatel the avodah zarah. But letzarcha, if he shaped some wood off the getchke to make the getchke look nicer, then he asura, the getchke remains asur ba'ana, but ushva'el mutar, and those pieces will be mutar. So that answers our shaila. You see clearly, the brayso says that it would be mutar. The Yisrael sheshiva avodas kachavim. What if the Yisrael chopped the piece off of the getchke? It doesn't matter. Yisrael cannot be mevatel avodah zarah. Bein l'tzarcha, bein l'tzarchai. He ushva'el asur, and everything remains asur because the yid cannot be mevatel any avodah zarah. Zog to Gemara weiter. Itmar. Avodas kachavim b'shenishtabra. A getchke that broke by itself. Now we had this same shaila at the beginning of the parak where we had a machlokes Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan held if the getchke just broke by itself, it's not a bittul. Rish Lakish held sure it's a bittul because the guy is going to say you can't even take care of yourself. You expect to take care of me. But we have the same machlokes over here. Rav Omar sarich levatel kol kisem b'kisem. It's not bottle. Every little splinter you have to be mevatel in order for it to be mutter. Ushmul Omar avodas kachavim ain't betel. Avodas kachavim can never be bottle. Elo derech kedilasa only if it's the way it's grown. Frankly, that doesn't make any sense. Adarabba derech kedilasa mi mevatla. If it's exactly the way it was grown, it was built, it wouldn't be bottle. Elohari Omar. This is what Shmuel means to say. The only time the avodah zarah maintains its status of avodah zarah is if it's still in the mint condition. But once it's broken, it's automatically bought. So Shmuel clearly holds that earlier that a avodah that broke by itself, that the guy will still bow down and serve the broken pieces of his getchke, and therefore it still needs bittul. A person never bows down or serves the broken pieces of a getchke, and therefore the fact that it's broken is bottle. Maybe not. Maybe everybody holds that you would bow down to broken pieces and they still remain asur. Now we're speaking about if a piece of the avodah zarah then splintered further, is that considered a bittul? Because even that someone would serve. Because even someone who would serve broken pieces of a getchke, if those pieces continue to splinter and crumble, for sure those are going to be mutter. The boy same, or you can say the chula alma shivrei shvar mutar. Maybe everybody else those will be mutter. We're talking about an avodah zarah. It's an avodah zarah that's built out of pieces. It's like a Lego avodah zarah. It's designed to come apart and to be put back together. We're talking about a standard homeowner who owns his own getchke, but he has the expertise to put it back together because it's made to come apart. Keeping the head one of them holds, which is Rav holds, that since the head you could put it back together, even though it fell apart, it's not bottle and it still requires bittul. Ella derech kedilasa the hainu urche. Lav kedilasa the ein tzrich levat. The avodah zarah only needs bittul if it's intact. If the avodah zarah falls apart, even though it could be easily put back together, it's no longer considered the Avoda Zara. Baruch Hashem, we were zeicha to finish Perak Chalat Slamim, Bli Neder, Had Nalach Chalat Slamim, Had Nalach Chalat Slamim, Had Nalach Chalat Slamim. We'll stop here, and Bez Hashem tomorrow morning we'll start from the new Perak.
Yeah.
Shkoyach.